Hi guys, I'm Mamie with OneJoyousSkip.com, and today I'm going to be creating a project using the Better Together stamp set by Neat and Tangled, and I'm going to be creating some Valentine's favors for my son's class. And so to get started, I'm just going to stamp out all these images. Because I'm going to be doing some Copic coloring, I have stamped them on some Express It blending cardstock using Memento Tuxedo Black ink. And I'm using my Mini Misty to stamp those out. The first impression worked out well, so I'm just going to go with that and start my coloring. I'm only going to color the little girl on the right for this video, but I do have some still shots at the end of the little boy that I colored as well. So I'm starting out with my Bee family here to color in her little dress, and I'm just doing really quick shading for this project because there is so much going on these sweet little gable boxes. And so I'm using B01 as my lightest color, B04 as my mid-tone color, and B06 as my darkest color. I think I was going to use B16 as well, but I think I just ended up using 3 colors because the image is so small I didn't want to risk bleeding by going over it so much. And since the B01 and the B04 are not that close together and I don't have a color that's in between there, I do try to do just some extra scrubbing with the B01 to make them blend, and that happens sometimes and it's fine. You just want to make sure that you don't get any bleeding when you do that. And now to color the bottom part of her dress, I'm using my R's. And I believe that I used R32, R29, and R35, I believe. And I also colored her boots in like a dark gray using my N family. My go-to for my N family in the kind of dark gray is usually N6, N4, and N2. But sometimes my N2 is almost out of ink, so sometimes I'll use C1 with a little bit of N2 just to kind of stretch it a little bit further because I am out of my N2 and I need to buy a refill for it. Okay, I used N8, N6, and N4. And now these are the colors that I'm going to be using for her skin tone. And I'm just doing some simple shading right there under the hairline would be a little bit of a shadow. And I have my light source coming from the top right. So anywhere where there's obstruction from the top right would have a shadow on the other side. And I'm using my E000 to blend everything out. And I use my R11 there just to put on some little bit of blush. And now I'm going to color in the little puppy. I'm using my E markers for that. My E33 is my lightest color. I believe. E35 is my darkest color. E33 is my mid-tone color. And then I'm just putting in a little bit of shading there for the doggy. And then I'm just going to blend everything out. Really simple. And sometimes I'll go back in and add a little bit more. I'll darken up the shading just a little bit to give the picture or the image some more contrast. And the E13 is what I use to blend everything out. I'm just putting some rosy cheeks on the dog. And now I'm moving on to her hair, and I'm using the YR and Y family to give her a little bit of a golden blonde color. And then I'll just go back under the puppy again to give a little bit more shadow on the top of her head there. And now I'm going to, something I don't always do, but I do on these really cutesy images, I'll go with my pigment gel pen and go along the sides where the highlights would be, just to give them a little bit more of an animated look. And now I'm just going to fussy cut this image out. And I'm just cutting, leaving a tiny little border, white border around the whole image. I like to do this sometimes because it helps to make the image stand out a little bit more wherever you put it. It doesn't blend in with the background as much. If you want for an image to really blend in with the background, you can just cut it right on the border. But if you want it to kind of stick out a little bit, then you would put a little bit of a border around it, a little white border. And as you can see, they're really easy to cut out. And I'm using my honeybee scissors to cut that out, my favorite scissors for doing any fussy cutting. And this is the gable box that I'm using for the Valentine treats. And I do have a die for that. I'm just going to put a little bit of mono multi-glue there behind the little girl to give me a little bit of a wiggle room, so I put her right where I want to, make sure her feet aren't sticking off the bottom. And I did not pre-plan the project, and so what you see here is my first idea of what I wanted to do, so I fiddled with it a bit. I really didn't like the spacing by putting the U and then the rest of the sentiment so far underneath it. And so I struggled a little bit with that, but then I found out a way to kind of put them all together so that they stayed close together, so that the words stayed close together. And then I cut out a little banner, stitch banner die here. And I'm going to do some embossing, so I'm just going with my embossing buddy over the die cut there. And I'm going to do just some clear embossing on top of some black stamping using my Versa Fine Onyx Black ink. And so I'm just going to sprinkle that right on top of that. And that just gives the sentiment a little bit more of a variation. It makes it pop out and shine a little bit. And also the VersaFine takes a while to dry. And so this is, excuse me, this is a way to kind of speed that process up by just putting some heat embossing across the top. Because I have a tendency to smear VersaFine all the time. I love it. It's a great ink and it's very bold and crisp. And it makes really good impressions, but I always end up smearing it. So this is a great way to go ahead and take care of that immediately so that you don't smear it later on while you're working on your project. And now I'm just taking some vellum here and I'm stamping in white the rest of the sentiment that says "are my favorite." So it's going to say "you are my favorite." and I couldn't decide how I wanted to put the rest of it. I wanted to lay it right across, but I just really didn't like covering up the Y there. So I ended up just cutting it down the middle and separating the sentiment a little bit and doing it more in a block style. And I think that worked out okay. You know, with every project you do, there's parts that you're going to compromise unless you want to spend 10 hours on each project. And so that was my compromise for this project. And so I'm just going to put a little bit of adhesive behind the vellum there, behind the words, so that you don't really see the adhesive too much. And I think that's looking pretty good. And so now for my final step, I'm going to be coloring in the little hearts that come with the stamp set as well. And I'm going to put the little hearts all over the basket. I mean, all over the gable box. And so I want to just remind you guys that if you do order anything from Not2Shabbyshop.com to use my discount code JOY10 so you can get an extra 10% off. She has all the latest and cutest products in her shop. So please go check her out. And make sure that you check out the rest of the cards in my love series. So be sure to check those out. I have a couple of tips and techniques in those videos as well. And so I thank you guys so much for stopping by, and I am finishing up this project here with some hearts kind of all over, and in the still shots you'll see that I added a bow, and you'll get to see the other box that I made as well. So I hope that you are enjoying this series, and I appreciate you guys coming by and liking, and please subscribe to my channel to get more of these videos. And I hope you guys have a super awesome day. Thanks a lot.